Who better to preview tonight's game between Gonzaga and San Francisco than Chris Gerlufsen, the head coach of the Dons? Hear what he has to say about this team and preparing for the Zags on today's Locked On Zags podcast.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, make every moment more right now. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Very excited to be joined today by Chris Gerlufsen, the head coach of the San Francisco Dons, talking about this game against Gonzaga, also talking about Mark Few's 700th victory, talking about his team, the WCC, adding Oregon State and Washington State, all sorts of fantastic stuff. Check it out right here. Well, I am thrilled to be joined today by Chris Gerlufsen, now in his second year as the head coach of the San Francisco Dons, currently in Spokane, getting ready for a Thursday night battle with the Zags at the Kennel. And Coach, first place that I want to start here is talking about the differences with this Gonzaga team, because you're preparing for a team that they don't have Drew Timme, they don't have Julian Strawther, they don't have Rasir Bolton, who played very well last year against San Francisco. How do you prepare for a team that really only has 3 players coming back from last year's roster and just a whole bunch of players that are new into that system?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the first thing I would say is credit to Coach Few and his players for kind of adapting to the new look roster. I think they've gotten a lot better as the season's progressed. I think they're learning how to play together. Obviously a little bit different look now, playing 3 bigs together a lot of the time. But they've figured out how to make that beneficial for them, being plus 10 on the glass. And you can see a noticeable improvement in the guys who are holdovers in the program. I think Anton Watson has taken his game to another level. I like all the new pieces they have, and I think they're just figuring it out. And that's a credit to Coach Few and his staff for kind of joysticking his players around in the right way.
Yeah, I think, Ryan Nembhard in particular kind of struggled a little bit early in the year. I think just kind of finding his role and adjusting to new teammates. But as of late, I think in the year 2024, he has 25 assists and 0 turnovers, something along those lines. Just some ridiculous production that we have seen from him as he's kind of started to get more comfortable in his role. And I think, the narrative around this team has been more negative than we've seen in the past. Obviously, the top 25 ranked streak ending after 8 years. And I know that has kind of caused a little bit of concern and some panic among some Gonzaga fans who are not used to being in a spot where, every WCC game isn't as guaranteed as it's been in the past. And you don't have a go-to guy like Drew Timme the way they had over the last 4 years. But it sure feels like you said, this team has really started to kind of find that groove. And as you know, with the team that has had a lot of new pieces that have to find the spot, it feels to me at least like it's more just a matter of, hey, it just takes some time to put all the pieces together. And when you start with a tough non-conference schedule and some tough road games like Washington and Santa Clara in conference play, like you gotta spend a little bit more time getting those pieces together. But this team, it feels like to me at least, they're starting to kind of find those pieces at the right time going forward.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the way of college basketball in general right now, with the turnover and the transfer portal and teams having almost new look rosters year in, year out. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to figure out what's best for your team. But I've been really impressed. I mean, for somebody who is prepared to play the Zags, a lot of times and over a lot of different years, this is a really good team. And I think, as you said, they're kind of learning how to play with each other, learning strengths, weaknesses, and what's best for the team. And that's what coaching is. So I think they're going to continue to get better as the year goes on.
You kind of mentioned the three big lineup too, and that's something that I had a lot of reservations about. And I've had listeners who've already said, "Well, you didn't think this was going to work, and it looks like it's working." And I think a lot of that is a testament to Ben Gregg's ability to kind of step into that role for this team. And I think a part of it too is just as simple as him being one of those players who's been in the system. He's experienced understanding like what is asked of him, and no shade to Dusty Stromer, but he's a freshman who I think was just kind of struggling to find that role, and hopefully we'll find a better fit coming off the bench. But for your team, in terms of preparing for now a new starting lineup, which in the 10 plus years I've covered the Zags, Mark Few doesn't change the starting lineup in the middle of the season very often. Mm-hmm. So that's certainly a new thing. But how do you prepare for a lineup that's going to have that much size in the front court?
Yeah, it's a challenge. The physicality and the way they're rebounding the ball and creating second and third scoring opportunities for their team is impressive. With them being plus 10 on the glass, they have a high offensive rebound percentage rate. And kind of the sneaky thing is, even with playing three bigs, their pace of play hasn't dipped. And normally you would say, well, teams playing three bigs and they must be playing a lot slower. Mm-hmm. That hasn't changed at all for Gonzaga. They're still playing at a really high rate offensively, being I think they're a top 30 defensive team and a top 25 offensive team in the country to this point. So really impressive stats.
I want to talk a bit about Mark Few before we transition into talking more about this San Francisco club and what Gonzaga fans can expect. But Coach Few obviously just picked up that 700th career win. I know you've been on the sidelines against him quite a few times from your time as an assistant coach at San Diego and last couple of years here at San Francisco as well. And what do you think it is? I mean, obviously this program wasn't, he didn't inherit a program that was already heads and shoulders above the WCC. He kind of helped build them into this spot, and teams have started to kind of catch up to them. But what do you think he's been able to do over an incredibly lengthy career to maintain this level of success and be in a position where, he's picking up, he's the only active coach right now for another week or so until Tom Izzo gets there. He's the only active coach who's got all 700 career wins with one team. It's just an extraordinary run. And I'm somebody who's seen him a lot. I'm curious what you think about his ability to get into this spot. It
speaks to the program in general and how he's built it. I shot him a text after he got that win. And of course, because he's a humble guy and about the right stuff, he gave all credit to the players and the coaches that have worked for him. But you can't lose sight of how good of a coach he is. To win that many games over this many years and to have continued success just speaks to the way he goes about his business and has built the program here. It is a program, and it's a program that wins year in, year out. And to win 700 games, shoot, I hope I'm around long enough to even coach 700 games. It is just an amazing, amazing stat and achievement. And I know Gonzaga fans, they're appreciative and value what they have, but this is an amazing feat.
Well, Coach Gerlufsen and I are going to talk more about this 15-5 San Francisco roster, what we might expect from the Dons tonight, all that coming up after a word from today's sponsor, eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's what helps keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts to choose from for your ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your car every single time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Well, let's talk about these Dons. 15-5 on the year right now, 4-1 here in the WCC play. Picked up some great non-conference wins, 3 wins over Power 6 programs. Had Minnesota in town at the Chase Center, beat Vanderbilt and DePaul as well. Also some really, really close games against Utah State, against Grand Canyon, against Boise State. A really tough non-conference schedule with a lot of really good opponents. And how do you feel that non-conference schedule has helped prepare your team? Because again, some of the same situations, a lot of new players, a lot of new starters kind of coming into the system at the same time. And how do you think that non-conference schedule prepared you? And how do you kind of feel like this team has performed up to this point?
Yeah, I think we kind of went through some of those same kind of growing pains that Gonzaga went through. We tried to schedule in a way that was going to put us in at least in a conversation for, being a postseason team. With the way that we scheduled. And I thought that definitely benefited us. Even the games that we lost weren't games that hurt us, and performed pretty well in those games. Obviously, we wanted to win those, but those games didn't hurt us, and we'll continue to schedule the same way going forward. I think it's prepared us for league play. The other night against St. Mary's, I would say that's the only game out of all the games we played this year where really we did not perform to the level that my expectations are. And we learned a lot through that game. But I'm happy in terms of where we're at. I think we can get a lot better still. There's still some areas we're trying to address, but I like our group. I like the potential of our group.
You and I had an opportunity to speak early in the season and even before the season about this team. And we talked a handful of times about Jonathan Mogbo. And honestly, I don't know that I could have expected, or that many people could have expected, the performance that we have seen from this young man up to this point in the season. A transfer from Missouri State was productive at Missouri State, but is averaging a double-double this season. He's incredibly efficient as a scorer. But to me, what has stood out the most, not just from looking at the box scores, but from watching the games, is his ability to pass the ball, and how much more difficult he can make it for opposing teams, because he can not only score around the rim, he's not only tenacious on the glass, but he can distribute the basketball and force teams to have to defend him a little differently. What kind of weapon has he been for this team, and how has he kind of gotten to this point where he's having this tremendous breakout season?
Yeah, for the way that we like to play, having bigs that can be decision makers are huge for us.
Mm-hmm.
We like to space teams out and employ a lot of 5 out, and to have a big guy who you can put the ball in his hands and he makes decisions like a guard, and that's invaluable. And really, some of that stuff was learned after he was on campus here. We had high expectations for him, but he has exceeded all those expectations and then some. And I still think he's learning and getting comfortable in terms of having the ball in his hands so much. He did not have that opportunity at his last school. Every place has different style of play and the way that they're going to use their bigs. We just choose to use our bigs in a way where, they're decision makers for us.
Well, one thing that I think a lot of fans who have followed the WCC, who followed San Francisco, certainly will think about with the program as of late, is the guard development. Jamari Bouye going from somebody who wasn't playing much early on to being now an NBA two-way guy. Khalil Shabazz from a community college to being the school's all-time leader in 3 points. Like, this is a tremendous pipeline of guards that have come through the system. And we're kind of seeing something similar with Marcus Williams, obviously a guy who did not start in the program. He's been at a couple other schools, but bought into the system enough to stay for a second year, something he hadn't done previously, and is now really having this big breakout season. We're seeing him be more efficient as a driver, more efficient as a finisher, career high in points. Like, again, kind of similar question. What do you think has helped him elevate his game? Is it really just kind of there not being a Shabazz or Bouye and he gets more opportunities with the ball, or what has kind of helped him grow as a player to be what the kind of production that he's had this season?
No, I think, some of that has to do with how we play. Some of that has to do with opportunity. Some of that has to do with, I hope players, when they play here and play for myself and our staff, feel a level of freedom. offensively to kind of be the best versions of themselves. We try not to put players' games in boxes and allow them to kind of flourish, and we encourage guys to maybe address some things that they didn't do well before they got here. And I think that's how you get better as a player and feel confident. But Marcus has done a great job in terms of building trust with myself and our staff. He's worked extremely hard, and he's improved in a lot of areas that maybe don't translate in a stat sheet in terms of becoming a better leader, having a better voice in our locker room, and addressing, just his habits on a daily basis of what it takes to be a really, really good college basketball player. And he's not even close to where he can get to, which is exciting as his coach.
Well, we talked a little bit about Gonzaga having some new transfers in the starting lineup, especially at the guard position in Ryan Nembhard, and certainly that has been a newness for San Francisco as well. Williams in his second year, but for Malik Thomas, this is his first year in the program, and of course Mike Sharavjamts coming over from Dayton as well, both new starters in this program. And Thomas, didn't start the season in the starting lineup, but I was looking at his game logs, really, really good as of late. I think he's been in double figures in like 10 or 11 straight games, 20 points in 3 of his last 7 games. Like, he's really kind of exploded onto the scene as a scorer. And is that another one of those, like, hey, just starting to get more comfortable with a different system, a system that's not the same as what he was at USC, or just differences in how you're coaching him or working with him, or what has kind of led to this big breakout from him, because he's looked really good as of late?
Yeah, no, Malik's doing a really good job for us. He provides the spark that we need on both sides of the ball. He just has a really infectious way about himself, the way he goes about his day, the way he carries himself. And he learned what my expectations were and our staff's expectations were for him. And he put that into play, and that's a credit to him. He was buried a little bit at the beginning of the year, just struggled a little bit in terms of trying to meet those expectations. And once he did and got an opportunity, he took full advantage of the opportunity and kind of has never looked back to this point.
Want to talk a little bit about Mike as well. A 6'8" point guard, always going to be a matchup problem for everybody in the conference. Certainly, Gonzaga's got 2 starting guards who give up 5 inches at least to him. So that's going to be something I'm very curious to see how that matchup shakes out. But he's certainly a player who maybe hasn't scored as much as some people may have expected him to do, but he's an efficient shooter. He's a good distributor. What have you kind of seen from him and his development in his first season in San Francisco, coming off of that freshman year at Dayton? Yeah,
he's extremely almost unselfish to a fault at times, I try to breathe confidence and life into our perimeter guys to have the freedom to go make plays and score and shoot the ball. He's gotten a lot better shooting it from deep. That was kind of his last ditch thing he would do in his game. And I think he's become more confident shooting the ball. He has a natural feel for passing and distributing, which I love. I think he's easy to play with, but I'm going to continue to urge him to be even more aggressive from an offensive standpoint, because he can do it, and he's fully capable. And he's shown that in flashes. And have been happy with the way he's kind of developed on the defensive side of the ball. He's making some strides in that regard.
We spoke earlier about the kind of the narrative around Gonzaga being a little bit more negative, just because they started out the year a little weaker than they have in the past. And that's kind of been a bit of the narrative for the entire WCC as a whole. Part of that was some early season struggles for St. Mary's as well, which they've seemed to have righted the ship similarly to Gonzaga. But I wonder for you, like, having now coached a handful of games in the conference this year and paying attention to these teams, it doesn't feel to me like the conference is it feels like there's still a lot of really talented programs, a lot of talented teams. Santa Clara has looked fantastic. And like, how do you feel like the kind of the health of the conference right now, especially when you look at it, a couple of years into this transfer portal era, this NIL era, which I know a lot of people are concerned about how that's going to impact, programs at smaller schools and without as big of budgets. And how do you feel like the WCC has kind of adapted to this new era and the kind of production and quality of the teams in the league this year?
Yeah, I think, having only seen the teams, with my eyes firsthand, the teams that we've played to this point, it doesn't feel generally any different than any years past. There are no off nights in the WCC. I think every league is probably adjusting to and operating in this new realm of what the NIL and transfer portal looks like. I think every league is probably trying to figure out how you raise the profile of your league. And I think that is a key thing with our league, and whether that be through scheduling, whether that be through more NIL opportunities. There's a lot of different ways to raise the profile of your league. And I think Stu Jackson and his staff is working through that and doing a really good job trying to be proactive. And I still think this is one of the best leagues, in the country. And we need to continue to raise the profile of the league.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that has happened in that regard is the additions of Oregon State and Washington State, these two schools that were kind of, frankly, hung out to dry a little bit by the Pac-12 dissolving the way that it did, and programs that obviously are football programs but weren't able to come to an immediate agreement with the Mountain West for what sounds like a variety of reasons. And Stu Jackson and their staff kind of swooped in and pulled them in for a couple of years. And, it doesn't necessarily sound like it'll be a permanent thing. Who knows exactly what it'll look like, but it certainly raises the at least the brand awareness for the WCC. Oregon State in particular has struggled on the men's basketball side for the last couple of years. Washington State, of course, Coach Kyle Smith, former San Francisco head coach as well. It's fun to have these two schools joining the conference here and kind of raising that profile a little bit. What was your kind of reaction to finding out that these two schools were going to become conference members next year?
Yeah, I was just happy to see that the league did something, as I said, to be proactive in terms of where we were at. And, I think it's a really good short-term remedy. And now the challenge is, what do you do moving forward? Whether that has a chance to be a long-term deal or not, I don't know. And I'll leave that to the powers that be to figure that out. But I do like that we're trying to be proactive and be forward thinking. I think that's how you have to operate, especially in the landscape, the way things sit today across college basketball. I think there's going to continue to be changes, not just in our league, but, leagues across the country.
Yeah, it certainly feels like this is the beginning of what could potentially be more moves, whether that's Gonzaga deciding to go somewhere else, whether that's the WCC trying to make other additions, whether it's somebody like Grand Canyon, who's obviously having a fantastic season, or Seattle U, who, kind of fits the identity of the league in a lot of ways. I know your squad was able to face them earlier this year as well. They're a pretty good basketball club, also managed to beat that Grand Canyon team. So certainly feels like there are some options for the WCC to continue to look forward and continue to grow in ways that, I think it feels like it's a little scary for some of these conferences when you're seeing, the Big 12 just gobble up as many teams as they possibly can, and the Big 10's doing the same. And suddenly geography is not something that's really tying schools to any particular area. And it's a lot of changes kind of happening all at once. But I agree. I've been personally very happy to see the WCC not just kind of waiting to see, okay, who's going to leave next? What's going to happen next? Like, they're stepping out and making moves to make this league a little bit more viable. And I think that's a very good sign for the safety and the security of the league going forward.
No, absolutely. And hopefully as time goes on, we can continue to, see changes and things that we can do to, again, make our brand and make our league as strong as it can be.
Last thing I want to talk to you about, Coach, is not only this upcoming game against Gonzaga on Thursday, but the return game, which is going to be late February 29th. And that game is not going to be at War Memorial on USF's campus. It's going to be played at the Chase Center, the home of the Golden State Warriors. I know your team has already gotten an opportunity to play there this year, and it's something that I know a lot of Gonzaga fans are excited about, and certainly some Bay Area Gonzaga fans are excited about as well, as the opportunity to go to that arena. What does it mean for your team and your program and your school to get the opportunity to play at the Chase Center and play a team like Gonzaga, and I know Minnesota earlier in the year, to play these high-profile programs in this NBA arena?
Yeah, it's just that. I think the more opportunity we give our guys to play, in NBA arenas, especially in our home city, I think the better. Obviously, we love playing at War Memorial. I think we have a really strong home court advantage there. And I was kind of 50-50 on moving the game, to be quite honest, when it was first presented to me. But the more I thought about it, the more I talked with my athletic director and people around the program, the more I thought it had a chance to really raise a profile again for our conference, for the way we're viewed, and for the way the conference is portrayed, on national television. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a great event, not only for us and for Gonzaga, but for our city. It's a chance to really elevate and draw some national attention to the game. So a lot of games will be played, obviously, before we get to that point. But we'll be excited when that game does arrive.
Coach Chris Gerlufsen, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, to kind of get a better insight into this program. Really looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be an extremely fun one between two of the really good teams in this conference. I'm looking forward to both these matchups, and want to thank you again for coming on.
No, I appreciate you having me. Thanks, Andy.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thanks again to Coach Chris Gerlufsen for coming on to the podcast. Always appreciate getting a chance to talk to him. Thanks to you as well for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Appreciate every single one of you. Shout out especially to those everyday listeners as well, and to those of you who are on the Discord channel. Again, if you want to join, we are chatting all day long about the Zags. We'll have a big game thread talking about this game tonight against San Francisco. It is free to join. There is a link in your show notes on both audio and video platforms. We'll be back on Friday reviewing this game against San Francisco, getting you all ready for Saturday's game against the Tigers of Pacific. Until then, though, as always, go Zags.